Hi everyone! Today's lecture is going to cover cognitive development, which is covered in Chapter 8 of our text. We've come a long way from a time when infants were viewed as helpless and dependent. Through science and theory, we now can confidently say that infants are competent thinkers as well as active participants in their development. The theme throughout our text is that infants are scientists themselves, actively exploring, organizing and reorganizing concepts and ideas, hypothesizing, and drawing conclusions as they make meaning of their world. When we're able to see infants this way, we're then able to support their development to its full potential. Just as we are eager to learn about them, infants are more than eager to learn about us. The following quote sums that up. The scientist peering into the crib, looking for answers to some of the deepest questions about how minds and the world and language work, sees the scientist peering out of the crib, who it turns out is doing much the same thing. Here we have a sequence of pictures showing us Victor from figure 3.1 in chapter 3 in our text. He's playing and exploring toys. Look closely at the sequence and ask yourself, how is Victor revealing his thinking? Notice that the vehicles are all blue. 3 of them are cars that are similar in shape and color, yet different in size and possibly weight. The 4th vehicle is a truck, which Victor ultimately places at the front of the line, somewhat separate from the rest. The animals he chose to put on the cars are all cats, tigers, and lions. He placed all of them on top of the vehicles. He has 2 tigers together in the front and the 2 lions in the back. Notice how all of the vehicles and cats are facing the same direction. Just in these 3 pictures, we can really tell a lot about how Victor is revealing his thinking. To reflect on what made Victor's investigation possible, there's some questions we can ask. How did the materials that were available to Victor influence what he did? What thought and planning went into the assembly of these materials? What might a teacher's planning look like with respect to what we see here? Lastly, is this an example of play space as a context for curriculum? Now let's take a look at some pictures of 6-month-old Severin and his sequence of play. First, we're looking at this picture over here. He is exploring some new plastic soap dishes that have been added to his play materials. Here he is noticing and handling a small soap dish, which appears to be square and bumpy and plastic. Next, in this picture down here, Severin shakes the soap dish and in doing so drops it. After the soap dish falls out of his hand, he notices 2 additional soap dishes. He turns his attention to these new objects. One is identical to the first one he is grasping, and the second is larger with different design and texture. His attention, as you can see here, is drawn first to the identical soap dish. He investigates and examines this new toy, just as he did the first. He's experimenting with these objects using his senses and body to figure out what it is all about. What is he capable of making it do? Then in the next picture, he finds the first soap dish and reaches to place one soap dish on top of the other to make an identical match. Severin, at 6 months old, focuses his attention, explores new objects. He remembered the first soap dish, found it, and then matched the 2 identical soap dishes together. Do you see any of the strategies for learning here? Is Severin revealing in his thinking signs of attention maintenance, imitation, memory, or problem solving? Do you see any evidence in the sequence of concepts such as classification or seriation, causality, spatial relations, number and quantity, or representation? Thinking of the play space and what was available to both Severin and Victor in the pictures we looked at, can you identify how the environment, toy selection, and available materials influenced concept development? Thoughtfully chosen materials that are continually available and housed within predictable spots where infants know they can find them, as well as new materials added to the play space to prompt exploration and discovery, are all important aspects of creating play space as curriculum. Also, uninterrupted time for infants to explore, investigate, and experiment with materials in order to construct meaning and build concepts is important. When we view play space as curriculum and select toys that support concept development, we are providing an environment for learning. What does it mean to build knowledge and construct concepts? This happens with infants and also through the lifespan. We gather information and we compare it to what we already know. Does the new information fit with what we already know? According to Piaget, a schema is one's understanding of how something works or what something is. When we're faced with new information and it fits into what we already know, then we assimilate it into existing categories of the mind. If it does not fit into what we already know, then our categories of mind change and we accommodate to make new meaning. In this way, we construct knowledge. In the process, there are times of disequilibrium. This can get messy and feel like a struggle. When we're caught in the moment of not knowing, yet trying to figure it out, or when we're engaged by something that surprises because it is counter to what we expect. Although it can be frustrating, a state of disequilibrium is part of the process of building concepts and making new meaning. It is through this process that we're forced to restructure a pre-existing category and accommodate, which is when we make new meaning. Making meaning and building concepts looks different at different ages as children grow and add to their knowledge base. From birth to around 8 months, young infants use their senses to gather information about what things are like and to organize new information. From 4 months to about 18 months, infants' focus begins to change from, what is this like, to the next step of, what can I make this do? Their focus of play is to form and test hypotheses and to experiment and investigate to solve problems. Now, from about 18 months to 36 months, older infants predict and experiment to figure out how things relate and how they can solve problems. In doing so, they make connections, generate theories, and form schemas. The slides that follow show materials for use by infants and toddlers. Analyze the objects and materials in each photo and note how they might prompt building the concepts described in Chapter 8, classification and seriation, causality, spatial relations, number and quantity, and representation. Let's begin with classification. Classification can be defined as distinguishing differences and putting things into relationships. This includes categorizing, grouping, and sorting. All of these things are a foundation for science, math, and literacy. Features to look for in toy selection for 4 to 18-month-olds that support classification are objects that are identical to support the identification of things that are the same, as well as objects that are similar but distinct to support the identification of characteristics that make things different. It is important, at this age especially, to invite exploration with all of the senses. So look for things with a range of textures, temperatures, tones, shades, smells, sounds, patterns, and weight. Following are several pictures of multiple objects. While looking at these pictures, think about what would invite infants to build the concept of classification. What characteristics, such as sight, sounds, textures, smell, might draw the infant to notice or manipulate the objects to discover physical properties? What potential did you see for building the concept of classification? Were there objects that were identical? Did you notice objects that were similar but distinct? Were there objects that invite exploration with all the senses, such as a range of textures, temperatures, tones, shades, and patterns? Features to look for in toy selection for 18 to 36-month-olds that support the development of the concept of classification include collections of objects of a specific type that are alike in shape, size, color, or function, containers for collecting treasured items, objects that can be lined up or stacked by size or degree of difference, also objects with distinguishing differences such as shape, size, color, or identity that can be used to make patterns. Following are several pictures of multiple objects. While looking at these pictures, think about what would invite toddlers to build the concept of classification. What characteristics such as sight, sounds, textures, smell might draw the toddler to notice or manipulate the objects to discover physical properties? For older infants or toddlers, what potential did you see for building the concept of classification? Did you see collections of objects of a specific type, containers for collecting treasured items, objects that can be seriated, or objects with distinguishing differences that can be used to make patterns? Infants and toddlers learn through exploration. By providing them a play space full of a variety of thoughtful materials, you're supporting their thinking and cognitive development. Going back to Chapter 4, observing the infant as they explore their environment is a crucial piece in planning curriculum. Through observation, we can see concepts that are being built as infants reveal their thinking, and this can guide us in what we offer next through materials that support their learning.